Young black worker in trouble, asks a billionaire for help. What he says will break your heart. The marble lobby of Wells Global Tower gleamed like a monument to power. Executives in sharp tailored suits hurried across the polished floor, their expensive watches catching the light. Every detail of the building screamed wealth and untouchable authority. And then came Malik Thompson. At only 22 years old, Malik walked in wearing dusty construction boots and a worn jacket still smelling of cement. His hands were rough, his clothes marked by labor, his face shadowed with exhaustion. To most people in that lobby, he did not belong. Security guards stepped forward immediately, their posture sharp and dismissive. "You cannot be here," one barked. "I need to see Preston Wells," Malik replied firmly. His voice carried a quiet urgency. "It is important." The executives nearby slowed their steps, amused. Some whispered, others smirked. One even pulled out a phone, recording the scene like it was cheap entertainment. "Important?" Another laughed. "You are just a worker. Men like you do not get past this lobby." But Malik stood his ground, his gaze unwavering. He was not desperate. He was not lost. He had walked into this tower with purpose. What they did not know was that this construction worker had come prepared to shatter the empire from within. The boardroom at Wells Global Tower was as imposing as its owner. A vast glass table stretched across the room, surrounded by leather chairs occupied by executives in tailored suits. At the head sat Preston Wells, the billionaire whose empire shaped skylines and crushed competitors. When the doors opened and Malik Thompson was led inside, laughter rippled across the table. He looked out of place, a young man in construction, boots, carrying nothing but a worn folder and a phone. Preston leaned back in his chair, unimpressed. "Do you know where you are standing?" he asked coolly. "This is not a soup kitchen. Whatever you are here to beg for, you will not find it in this room." Malik did not flinch. "I am not here for charity," he said evenly. "I am here to expose corruption inside Wells Global." The room stilled for a moment, then erupted in muffled chuckles. A few executives exchanged knowing looks. Preston smirked, shaking his head as if swatting away a fly. "Corruption? From you? A worker covered in dust? Tell security to escort him out." Two guards moved closer, but Malik did not move. Instead, he placed his phone on the glass table and tapped the screen. A video began to play, grainy footage of trucks unloading cement at a public housing site. Hours later, the same trucks were seen driving to a luxury skyscraper project downtown. Preston's smirk tightened. Malik swiped again. Another video. Steel rods meant for low-income housing, offloaded in a different private tower. He swiped again. License plates, delivery slips, signatures. Everything perfectly organized. Gasps filled the room. Board members leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Whispers spread like wildfire. The laughter was gone. Malik's voice cut through the tension. For months, materials that were supposed to build safe homes for poor families were stolen and funneled into your luxury projects. Cement, steel, insulation, all diverted. Thousands of families left in crumbling houses while your towers touched the sky. One executive muttered, "This cannot be possible." But the evidence spoke for itself. Preston's jaw tightened. He forced a dry chuckle. "You think some blurry videos will scare me? Do you know who I am?" Malik looked directly at him. "Yes, you are Preston Wells, but today you are also the man who will answer for what has been done under his name." The guards hesitated, unsure. The power in the room was shifting. Preston's confidence faltered, a flicker of unease breaking through his arrogance. For the first time, the billionaire realized that this young construction worker had not come empty-handed. He had come armed with the truth. The silence in the boardroom stretched heavy after Malik's last words. Every executive could feel it. The balance of power was shifting. What had started as mockery was turning into unease. Malik reached into his worn folder and spread out documents across the polished glass table. His voice was steady, his movements precise. "For 6 months," he began, "I have been gathering evidence. Not guesses, not rumors, proof." He pointed to the first file. "This came from Jason Mendez, an investigative journalist. He traced irregular financial flows from Wells Global Projects, inflated costs, payments to ghost suppliers, and fake invoices. Every dollar has a trail, and Jason followed it." The board members leaned forward. Malik continued, sliding another file. "This ledger belonged to Rebecca Lang, a retired accountant from your company. She was forced out after 30 years of service. Before she left, she copied secret records that prove millions were moved off the books. Some executives exchanged nervous glances. Rebecca's name was not unknown to them. Malik then laid down a set of charts and highlighted graphs. "And these reports are from Professor Andre Bennett, an expert in urban development. He analyzed government contracts handled by Wells Global. Every discrepancy in cement, steel, and insulation costs, traced and documented." He lifted his phone again, showing time-stamped videos and photographs. Every delivery, every truck, every stolen order, cross-checked with invoices, receipts, and signatures. The room was silent, the weight of the evidence undeniable. What had once seemed like the angry words of a worker now stood as the foundation of a potential corporate scandal that could shake Wells Global to its core. Just then, the doors slammed open. Jack Callahan, chief engineer of Wells Global, stormed inside. His face was red with anger, his voice dripping with disdain. "This is nonsense," Jack barked. "He is nothing but a desperate kid. He is using his sister's illness as a sob story to get money. You are wasting your time listening to him." A murmur spread around the table. Some executives looked away, uncomfortable. Malik did not raise his voice. He simply pulled out another sheet from his folder. "Is this your signature, Mr. Callahan?" Malik asked calmly, sliding the paper across the table. Jack froze. On the document was his personal authorization, approval for shipments of cement that had vanished from the public housing site. Preston's eyes narrowed. He picked up the document, studying it closely. "Jack," Preston said slowly, "is this yours?" Jack shifted in his place, his confidence cracking. "It is just one paper. It could have been forged." "This is a setup," Malik interrupted quietly, laying down 2 more sheets. "Then explain these, and these. Every one of them bears your signature." The evidence piled higher. Receipts, delivery slips, authorizations, all pointing to the same man. Jack's voice rose, desperate now. "This kid is manipulating you. Do you not see? He is trying to destroy everything we built." Preston's voice cut through the chaos, firm and cold. "Enough." The room froze. Preston rose to his feet. His gaze locked on Jack. For the first time, his arrogance gave way to anger, not at Malik, but at the betrayal sitting inside his own company. "Jack Callahan," Preston said, his tone sharp as glass. "You are finished here. You are fired. Effective immediately." The words crashed into the room like thunder. Gasps echoed around the table. Executives stared in disbelief. The mighty chief engineer, the man who had held power for years, was being cast out in front of everyone. Jack sputtered, his face pale. "Preston, you cannot do this." "I can," Preston snapped, "and I just did." 2 security guards stepped forward. This time, they were not moving toward Malik. They grabbed Jack by the arms as he shouted curses, dragging him out of the boardroom. The door slammed shut. Silence followed. For the first time, Preston Wells did not look at Malik with arrogance. He looked at him with caution, and with the uneasy respect of a man who had just witnessed a worker turn the entire room upside down. The heavy doors closed behind Jack Callahan, his angry shouts fading down the hall. The boardroom remained in stunned silence. For years, no one had dared to stand against Jack. Yet Malik, a worker with nothing but a folder of documents, had just forced his downfall. Preston Wells leaned back in his chair, eyes fixed on Malik. His usual arrogance had softened into suspicion, maybe even curiosity. Finally, Preston spoke. His voice was low, but every word carried weight. "Enough games. Tell me, Malik, what do you really want?" All eyes turned to Malik. The young man took a breath, his hands tightening around the folder. His voice was calm, but underneath was the tremor of truth. "What I want," Malik said, "is not for me. It is for my sister, Amara Thompson. She is only 16 years old. She has a rare heart condition. The doctors say she needs surgery soon. The cost is $200,000. Without it, she will not survive." Gasps rippled through the boardroom. A few executives covered their mouths, others looked down in shame. The air changed. Instantly, Malik's bravery was no longer just about exposing corruption. It was about saving his sister's life. Malik's voice grew stronger. "I have worked every overtime shift, saved every dollar, and still I cannot come close. But when I discovered what was happening here with the theft, the fraud, the lies, I knew I had to act. Not only for Amara, but for every family crushed under the weight of greed." Preston's eyes narrowed. For the first time he looked unsettled. This was no simple demand for money, no desperate blackmail. Malik had come with something more. Malik reached into his folder again, pulling out neatly typed pages. He laid them out on the table, sliding them toward the executives. "This is my proposal. A 5-year reform plan that can change the future of Wells Global and the communities it claims to serve." He held up the first page. 1. Community Oversight Committees. Independent groups made up of residents, workers, and leaders who will monitor every major project. No more hidden ledgers, no more stolen supplies. The second page. 2. Hire local workers. Do not bring in outsiders, while neighborhoods nearby remain jobless. Give struggling families the chance to rebuild their own communities. The third page. 3. Transparent supplier bidding. Every contract must be open and competitive. No more backroom deals. Every supplier will have a fair chance. The fourth page. 4. Dedicate a percentage of profits to schools and hospitals. Wells Global takes from these neighborhoods. It is time to give back. Malik's voice was firm, his eyes steady as he looked directly at Preston. "This is not about destroying your empire, Mr. Wells. It is about reshaping it. You have the power to build something greater than money. Build an empire that heals instead of exploits." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Preston leaned forward, his hands clasped tightly. His face was unreadable. Part anger, part admiration, part disbelief. The boardroom was silent, waiting for his response. Malik did not flinch. His final words cut through the silence. "Or you can refuse. You can cling to greed and let history remember you as just another corrupt billionaire who chose wealth over humanity." The tension was electric. For the first time, Preston Wells, the man who controlled everything, found himself at a crossroads, forced to choose between legacy and power, between ruin and redemption. The boardroom buzzed like a hive after Malik's words landed. Executives leaned toward one another, whispering furiously. Some shook their heads, others looked intrigued. The divide was clear. Half wanted Malik crushed, silenced, erased from the picture. The other half sensed a dangerous but powerful opportunity. At the head of the table, Preston Wells sat motionless. His fingers tapped lightly against the polished mahogany, but his face betrayed nothing. For years, he had thrived on ruthless deals, bending laws, crushing competition, and silencing dissent. He had convinced himself that was what it meant to win. That was how empires were built. But now, a construction worker had walked into his fortress and forced him to see himself in the mirror. Malik's voice still echoed in his head. Build an empire that heals instead of exploits. Preston rose suddenly from his chair. The room fell silent. Without a word, he walked to the massive windows overlooking the city. The skyline stretched endlessly, towers of steel and glass gleaming under the afternoon sun. Every building was a monument to his ambition. Yet staring at them now, he remembered something he had buried long ago. His own beginning. Preston had not been born into wealth. His father was a mechanic, his mother a nurse. He had worked nights in diners, scrubbing dishes until his hands bled, before college scholarships opened doors. Somewhere along the way, the boy who had once dreamed of helping his family had transformed into a man obsessed with power and status. Malik's challenge rang louder. Or let history remember you as just another corrupt billionaire. Preston clenched his fists. For the first time in years, doubt cracked his armor. Behind him, the whispers grew louder. One executive muttered, "We cannot allow this boy to dictate terms." Another replied, "But what if he is right? Imagine the press, the investors. This could turn us into heroes." Preston turned, back to the room. His eyes swept over the faces of his board, men and women who had followed him for years out of fear, profit, or both. Then he looked at Malik, young, steady, unshaken, standing with nothing but truth. The silence stretched until it felt unbearable. Finally, Preston spoke. His voice was calm, but carried a weight that silenced every whisper. "I have made my decision." He walked back to his seat, resting both hands on the table. "For years, I thought profit was the only legacy worth leaving. I see now that I was wrong. Malik Thompson has exposed corruption in my company, and instead of demanding money, he has brought us a plan for reform. He is not here to destroy Wells Global. He is here to save it." Gasps filled the room. Some board members looked horrified. Others stunned. One executive protested, "Mr. Wells, this will cost us millions." Preston's hand slammed against the table, silencing him. "This will save us billions, in reputation, in trust, in the future." He turned to Malik. "You will join us as a consultant. You will oversee these reforms." Malik hesitated, his voice steady but his eyes burning with urgency. "On one condition, immediate funding for my sister's surgery. She cannot wait." The room froze again. Preston did not blink. "Approved. Wells Global will cover every expense. She will have the best doctors, the best care, starting today." Malik exhaled, a quiet relief flooding his face. The board remained stunned, caught between disbelief and awe. In that moment, the empire shifted. The ruthless billionaire had chosen a different path, and it was a construction worker who had led him there. 18 months passed. The empire of Wells Global no longer looked the same. What had once been a symbol of arrogance and unchecked profit had become a model for reform, responsibility, and renewal. The story unfolded not through one man's words, but through faceless images, a montage of change narrated by time itself. First, there was Amara Thompson. She emerged from the hospital doors into bright sunlight, her steps steady, her smile radiant. Just 18 months earlier, she had been a fragile girl fighting for her life. Now she walked with confidence, her laughter echoing through the air as Malik walked proudly beside her. The surgery had not only saved her, but had given Malik a renewed purpose. Then came the sight of Malik Thompson himself, transformed. Gone was the young man in dusty work boots and torn gloves. Now he wore a tailored suit, crisp and dignified, as he walked through the glass doors of Wells Global. But beneath the suit, he remained the same man, the worker who had once stood in this building, with nothing but truth in his hands. The plaque on the office wall told a new story. Malik Thompson, Director of Community Safety and Integrity. The montage shifted. Construction sites across the city were alive with movement. Not faceless contractors, but local workers, men and women from struggling neighborhoods, now earning fair wages. Hard hats gleamed in the sun as foundations rose, not just for skyscrapers, but for homes, clinics, and schools. The hammering of nails and the pouring of cement carried a different rhythm now, the rhythm of rebuilding lives. New signs appeared on walls and gates, funded by the Wells Global Community Initiative. Schools where children once lacked desks now had new classrooms. Hospitals once short on supplies now had state-of-the-art wings. Families who had been forgotten now had roofs over their heads. For the first time, Wells Global's towers did not only scrape the sky, they touched the hearts of the people on the ground. The world noticed. Newspapers carried bold headlines. From scandal to salvation, Wells Global leads corporate reform. Billionaire and builder unite for change. Magazines ran stories not about Preston's wealth, but about his transformation. Investors who had once worried now saw soaring public trust. The name that once stirred whispers of corruption had become a beacon of responsibility. But not everyone walked away redeemed. The montage turned darker, to Jack Callahan, the disgraced chief engineer. Cameras flashed as he stumbled into a courthouse, his face pale, his once proud posture broken. The charges against him were endless: fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy. His accounts drained, his allies gone. Jack stood alone. News anchors did not call him an engineer anymore. They called him the man who stole from the poor. His downfall was complete, and his name became a warning etched into the city's memory. Back in Wells Global Tower, a quieter scene unfolded. On the top floor, overlooking the skyline, Preston Wells stood beside Malik Thompson. The city glimmered under the evening sun, a patchwork of glass, steel, and brick, some old, some new, some still in progress. For a moment, neither man spoke. They did not need to. Malik's presence reminded Preston of the boy he had once been, hungry for change. Preston's gaze carried the weight of a man who had nearly lost his soul to greed, but had found redemption through courage he had not expected. Courage that had come from a construction worker who refused to be silent. Finally, Preston broke the silence. "You were right," he said quietly. Malik nodded. "We were both right. You built the empire. I just reminded you what it could mean." Their eyes met, not as billionaire and worker, but as equals, as men who had fought on opposite sides of power, but had chosen to stand together for something greater. The skyline stretched endlessly before them, no longer a monument to arrogance, but a canvas of possibility. And then came the closing words, a narration that rose above the city, as faceless as the wind, but as sharp as truth. In a world built on greed, one worker's courage turned corruption into hope, proving that determination and truth can rewrite the future.